Welcome to r/entitled parents, where some people just shouldn't be parents. This post is by JJIA. Entitled mother and kid make me wait and try to get money and stalk my phone. Okay, I don't know how long this will be, but I'll try to shorten it as much as possible. Also, give you all the important information. Also, obligatory apology since English isn't my first language and I'm on mobile. Now, before we begin, the characters are me. I wonder who that is. Our nice teacher, entitled mother, who sadly was my teacher at the time this happened. Her precious entitled kid, and in who is in an elementary school. I'm bad at guessing ages, but this is all I got it from his age. So this story happened pre-COVID, but I was reminded of it. Basically, the plan was that my class would do a trip to another city where we would look at some great physics stuff. So the two teachers did the planning and stuff like this, and they came up with the following. The nice teacher lives in the city we were going to, so she just waited there for us to arrive, because it obviously didn't make sense for her to come to our school just so we can travel back to her city. So she can go back to our school after that trip to get her car and go to her city again. Now the first incident. We were set to meet about 8 a.m. at our train station near the school so we could take the train at 8:30. At about 8:15, the last students came and only one, or as it turned out, two, people were missing. Entitled mother, who was about 5 degrees... It was also about 5 degrees Celsius, or about 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and most were wearing light jackets, if at all, since we're supposed to be indoors almost all day. I, as a gentleman I am, have given my jacket to a girl who looked like she would freeze to death. Okay, I may have exaggerated this one a bit. The problem was, it was a bit cold to be wearing a shirt with nothing over it, but entitled mother had to come every moment, right? Wrong. We called the school, but they didn't know anything about entitled mother either. The train arrived and we have a problem. The entitled mother isn't anywhere in sight. Also, she's the one who already bought the ticket, so unless we paid for two, we couldn't take the train without her. At about 9 a.m., the school calls back and tells us that entitled mother is on her way because she had trouble. No specific information about the trouble, but alright. It's about 9:15 and she arrives with the entitled kid, who none of us knew was coming with us on the trip. Entitled mother effort.
Sorry, but I had a power outage, so my alarm didn't go off.
The majority of us called BS on this excuse, but of course not to her face. It also didn't really matter since she didn't give us a call directly or anything, and we had to wait 1.5 hours at this train station, which is outdoors, by the way. The second incident, as we went to switch trains, there was no train directly connecting our train station and the one of the city we had to go to. She was collecting money from the students for the tickets she bought. Fine and all until she asked me for money. Although I told her every time we planned a trip that I already had a ticket, so she doesn't need to buy me one. The conversation went like this. It's paraphrased, but this is the basic idea.
Oh, Pete, you haven't paid yet.
I said beforehand that I don't need a ticket,
Yeah, but I bought you one so to be safe.
with a really fake smile. But I told you several times I don't need one.
I understand, but if you wouldn't have a ticket, I would be on the hook because I didn't buy a ticket for you.
By the way, this is obvious BS. If I told her I had a ticket and take the train without the ticket, she gets out of the situation really easy since she has 20 witnesses on her side. I don't exactly remember the rest of our conversation, but it ended with me not paying since she bought it and I didn't want or need it. Also, I want to explain one more thing. She bought the tickets at a lower expense because she bought multiple at the same time, but got back something between the normal and her price, so she basically made profit with it. The third incident. During our second train ride, entitled kid finally proved that he was entitled mother's son. He especially took a liking in me and my phone, because I played a few games to pass the time. I didn't really care because he was a small kid and I had a phone, which he could watch by standing in the aisle. I started minding when I stopped playing games and started messaging people. I closed all the games beforehand, which is basically the most polite way I could have passively aggressively said, screw off to him, but he stayed, so, I turned my phone screen away from him so I can read/write messages without entitled kid reading them. I mean, it's not like I had anything to hide, but this doesn't mean I want some kid reading my private messages. After turning my screen away, the entitled kid seemed to get the message and walk back to entitled mother, who just sits across the aisle. He whispers something to her, and she answers,
Oh, entitled kid, just ask him if you can look at his phone.
I couldn't believe it. Entitled kid, of course, came wondering over again. I quickly closed the messenger and opened the game again to let him watch, so I wouldn't have to explain why he can't read my messages. A mistake, it turned out. Entitled Kid wasn't satisfied anymore by just watching me, so he started telling me how I could play better. Although what he said was the quickest way to lose. I then was so annoyed that I just shut off my phone. Entitled Kid got the message and went back to the entitled mother, who then kept him entertained. The entire time, my friends who sat around me, one next to and two others in front of me, tried not to laugh about the entitled kid. They also played in their phones, but entitled kid never bothered them. Ooh. So about 10 minutes, I made my next mistake. I turned my phone on again. I was done playing games, so Entitled Kid wouldn't come over, but he came regardless. I instantly turned my screen away from him. Again, this time, he didn't let this deter him. He went again and again, believed to finally have peace, only for him to be more creative and bring the worst audacity to a whole new level. He crawled underneath my seat so he could see my phone screen. What the I don't exactly remember what happened and what happened next, but I told him to get away from under my seat and shut my phone for the rest of the train ride. Oh, look at that. Entitled Mother, of course, never disciplined him or anything, but instead gave me a glare when I told him not to crawl under my seat. The rest of that day, I kept my distance from Entitled Kid and stayed near Nice Teacher once we arrived. On the ride back, I stayed with other friends of mine from where I sat now. I could hear Entitled Mother and Kid, but he didn't come over. I could tell a bit more about Entitled Mother and Kid, but this post is already pretty long. Too long, didn't read. My teacher let us wait for her in the cold. She tried to make me pay for something I neither need nor want because she bought it for me. Some of my teacher stalks my phone and doesn't behave. Holy. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't. What the? What did I just read? Oh my. This is. Okay. First of all, please don't crawl under anyone's seat. That's a great way to get kicked in the head. And believe me, it hurts to get kicked in the head. Our next post is by Time Caterpillar 24. Entitled mother-in-law demands a paternity test and then tries to kidnap the baby. What a title. This is my sister's story. Please excuse the language. English is not my first language. My sister and her husband were together for 5 years before they got married in 2016. Within a month of their marriage, my sister found out she was expecting. She told the very few people around her. Her mother-in-law was not one of them. When she was 12 weeks along, she finally felt secure enough to announce her pregnancy to everyone else. Entitled Instance Number 1. Entitled mother-in-law started crying and everyone around her was celebrating. My sister announced it during a family lunch between our families. The only ones who knew was me, my parents, and her husband, and my brother-in-law. My sister's in-law and brother-in-law siblings were just finding out. My sister had not wanted to share the news because she was worried about miscarrying. However, when her mother-in-law saw that my parents and me smiling and not being surprised, she started bawling, screaming that her sister ruined her experience of finding out about her grandbaby by not telling her as soon as she found out. She was angry about the fact that my sister shared the news with us, her literal flesh and blood, over her. Father-in-law had to remove her from the situation, and my sister felt guilty, as did my brother-in-law. They spent the rest of the afternoon trying to make up for it, while the rest of us were confused why mother-in-law thought she deserved to know first.
Because I'm the mother-in-law.
This led to another situation, entitled Instance Number 2. Now, since mother-in-law felt excluded, she made sure she was included from that point onwards, throwing a baby shower much before my sister wanted to, decorum arrangements, guest lists, and invites being done without as much as consolidation from my sister. inviting mostly mother-in-law's side of the family and not ours, forcing my sister to let her be present for each parental checkup and scan. Whoa, that's prenatal checkup and scan, not parental. That's okay. Moving into the house of my sister and brother-in-law to help take care of her baby, trying to control what and how much my sister eats, including throwing out essential medication prescribed to her. What? And arguing against my sister's nutritionist who had made a very extensive meal plan for her. Finally, brother-in-law and sister had enough. They asked her to move out and not stick her nose into everything that was not her concern. Mind you, my brother-in-law is a very big softy and a mama's boy, but he would stand up for his wife. This led to the next situation, number 3. Mother-in-law lost her garbage. Oh no, I have to censor so many things. 2 things, I believe. Nope, 3 things. How could her baby boy throw her out of the house? She decided it must be because my sister is a manipulative B word. Somehow, the string of thought landed her to presume that the baby cannot be brother-in-law's because brother-in-law wanted to wait till marriage to have intercourse and that my sister got pregnant too soon. Maybe your mother-in-law needs to know how intercourse works. So mother-in-law went around and spreading gossip and rumor everywhere and to anyone stupid enough to listen to her. She went from calling my sister's unborn baby the her baby to now calling it every name possible. Devil child, the result of cheating, whoa, and whatnot. Then she started demanding she needed to see proof of paternity, otherwise she would cut the child and my sister off from the family and never speak to her son again if he would not condemn his wife's behavior. She was also convinced my family knew of her pregnancy before her because we must have known she cheated and deceptively got her married to brother-in-law to hide the fact. But how do you go to that conclusion? They again had enough, and this went on till the day she gave birth. Sister and brother-in-law went low contact with mother-in-law for months, pre and postpartum. Around the time the baby was 5 months old, mother-in-law apologized and stated she wanted access to her baby. Again, how's it her baby? Sister and brother-in-law were very skeptical, but they agreed to for supervised visits only, and only if mother-in-law was constantly accompanied by either sister or brother-in-law. Mother-in-law did not like this. Okay, first of all, that's like the biggest red flag because if she really wanted to visit, if she really wanted to see her baby, then she wouldn't mind that. She once again threw a tantrum over how her son was being corrupted by his evil wife, and her darling son would never do something like this to his mother. She again brought up paternity and called brother-in-law blind and an idiot for letting some common hussy force him to parent someone else's child. Brother-in-law calmly said that it was either his way or the highway. Mother-in-law chose his way. This is the peak of the entitled saga. Mother-in-law tries kidnapping the baby. What the? Bro, call the cops. What the? Bro. So one of the days when mother-in-law was allowed to visit the baby, she is absolutely no help and demands to be catered to. Sis was very tired. The baby had to be colicked that week, and she was run to the ground. Brother-in-law could not be home, and sis tried rescheduling, but mother-in-law was already on the way, and it was nearly impossible to stop her. My sister said she just handed the baby over to mother-in-law in the living room and sat on the couch. Big mistake. She had no idea when she dozed off, but sis must have dozed off for a little while after being up with a fussy child and being exhausted and dealing with postpartum issues. When she came to neither mother-in-law nor the baby where it was found, she looked for the baby frantically and called her mother-in-law, but no answer. She got in touch with brother-in-law who drove home, picked her up, and went to mother-in-law's to look for her. Father-in-law answered and said she had not seen mother-in-law since she drove down to visit my sister, but her phone was on Find My iPhone, and they could track her phone from his device, and they shared it on the cloud. Sure enough, within minutes, they could see the phone moving towards a local hospital/lab area. It's a one-way road and a dead end. They hop into a car and drive to the hospital. What the heck? Sis finds mother-in-law arguing with the hospital staff for not performing any medical procedures and tests on the baby without the parents. Mother-in-law wanted to get a paternity test performed on the baby. She was detained by the hospital security, and the baby was in the custody of the hospital, who thought she had kidnapped the baby. I mean, she did kidnap the baby. Sis and brother-in-law reached just in time for the hospital to be calling the cops and trying to locate them. They had to show 10 different types of proof of identity and parentage to the staff before they were allowed to take their baby again. Yeah, what kind of what? How do you prove that? Like, let me think. ID. What do you need? ID, birth certificate, your birth certificate. I don't know. Um, brother-in-law threatened legal action against mother-in-law. Not sure what came out of that. This happened years ago, and mother-in-law and brother-in-law and my sis have the most strained relationship. Baby barely knows her grandma, but is quite close to grandpa, who often visits. Um, Edit. I just wanted to add that many of you are debating whether she has borderline personality disorder or narcissist personality disorder. I'm not sure if she is diagnosed, and even suggesting that it could be a poking a wasp's nest. I want to reach out to some of you who are sharing your own experiences with these or loved ones who have these. I just want to know I'm sorry and I'm proud of you for doing so well. I hope things get better. For those who have faced similar people, my sister says,
Find someone who'll be your rock through it. Define boundaries and stick up to them. Do not give in and always, always stay skeptical and vigilant around them.
and she also said, I'm glad the nightmare of a mother-in-law I have and me running to the hospital in mismatched shoes with a spit of covered hair and clothes was an entertaining read for so many people. One thing I learned from this story is I really need to work on my normal female voice because my entitled one really puts a strain on my throat. Okay, now on to the real point here. Your mother really did try to kidnap a baby, so taking a baby without consent is kidnapping. So yeah, I guess that's the video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and peace